as opposed to spending all this energy on, complaining to a certain extent, but complaining, venting, and talking about, what's happening, as opposed to at this point asking yourself the question, what's so? Right. And so I said this similar thing to this woman, and I said, what's so is you don't like it, you're stressed out, certain things aren't going to change. You have accountability and responsibility for how you respond in the situation. But what's so is that, this part of it isn't going to change. So you have to make a decision.
Welcome to Leadership, the Secret Sauce, the podcast where we talk to extraordinary coaches and leaders to dive into the realms of leadership and coaching. We're your hosts, Dave Lipsky and Matt Dodson. So let's jump in with another guest and find out their answer to the question, what is your secret sauce? Welcome to Leadership, the Secret Sauce with coaches Dave Lipsky and Matt Dodson. Join us as we sit down with another remarkable leader and coach, Julie Smith, uncovering her unique insights and strategies that make her truly exceptional. Before we begin, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Character Matters Coaching and Consulting, where they believe that your character is the compass guiding you through life's journey. Whether you're facing personal or professional challenges, they are dedicated to helping you discover and strengthen the core values that define who you are. Dave, who do we have on the show today?
I am excited to welcome back Julie Smith, who actually was our first pilot guest as we were learning the wild and wacky world of podcasting. So Julie, welcome back to the podcast. How are you?
I am good. Thanks for having me back. I was the beta tester, but you could have then said, no, she's never coming back. So thank you.
Absolutely. We're so glad to have you back. We like to start off with just an energy check-in, like on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 low, 10 being high. Where are you in your energy level?
Well, today I'm in New York, and today is probably one of the most glorious fall days, like perfect temperature, perfect skies, and it's Friday. So, a little tired from the week, but overall, it's a beautiful day. I was outside working a lot of the day, so I feel pretty good.
Number. You got
very cool.
You
don't have, you know what?
We've never had somebody not pick a number, but you could always be very unconventional.
I love it.
I knew Matt was going to make me pick a number.
Yeah,
you can pick a letter too.
Pick a letter.
No, I'll go with 8. How about that? Or 7 3/4.
7 3/4 is always nice.
Yeah, I bumped up to 8.5.
7.75.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
8.5.
Wow.
Yeah, I've
really?
had
that's impressive.
Yeah.
That is impressive. What about you, David? That's really impressive.
I'm thinking I'm at like an 8.25. Matt has me today. And I'm feeling really good. It is a glorious day in upstate New York. On Monday, I was sitting in Bryant Park and waiting to teach a class. And I sat in Bryant Park in a chair. And then 20 minutes later, an accordion concert appeared before me. So it was one of those glorious New York City days where you say, this is why we have New York City.
Right. This is why we live here, Bryant Park. And you just have an ensemble. That's all. It's all good.
Absolutely. And I just, to start off, Julie, when you are sitting in Bryant Park and somebody next to you says, what do you do? How do you respond on an airplane, on a train, plane? Like, how do you introduce yourself these days?
It's a good question, because I fairly or unfairly, I try to assess who my audience is, in that nanosecond, right? That's can I be sort of my sarcastic, humorous self, or what am I dealing with, right? Who's my audience? But I often say that I work with the human condition, or I try to make humans less dysfunctional. Or, sometimes I just say, I'm a coach, or, I work for a leadership development consultancy. It just really depends. But I often say the part about trying to make humans less dysfunctional. And then people always are like, what? Tell me more,
I mean, I'm pretty I feel like everybody believes that they are a dysfunctional human. So that's the perfect introduction. or a part of them
Or they
is
don't think, they think it's like everyone else's and
Right.
not them, so they want to know more about that, right?
I'm okay, but I have a friend that you could know,
Yeah.
which is
Right,
fine.
like, oh yeah, like, oh, I work with all these, whatever. So yeah,
I'm
but
surrounded by them.
I'm like, since when do you right, since when do you not have, like, when you put a group of people together, since when is there not dysfunction, right? I mean, that's a double negative, but
Mm,
since when isn't there dysfunction?
yeah.
So people get that, right? And then I guess I was like, oh, I'm a coach. I'm like, oh, I don't really like to start there, just because I also think some people have some preconceived notions about
Yeah.
coaches. So I'd rather start with like the dirty truth that everyone's dysfunctional, because everyone can buy into that statement, right? And then you can reverse engineer out to like, oh, well, this is how I spend my time, and well,
Yeah,
anyway.
that's the my mom's question, and Matt had a chance to experience what's wrong,
Yeah.
right? Like what's wrong with you versus the question we get to in coaching: what's right with you? How do you do that more often?
Mm,
It
Or
sounds so
tell me
Pollyanna.
more,
yeah.
right?
What's not right with
Exactly,
me?
Yeah.
exactly.
Yes. Julie, we do have our big question here that you probably have answered before. I've thought about it. What is your secret sauce as a coach or general?
Um, yeah, I've been asked that question, and I don't feel I have a very good answer, but I would say me at my essence is just being very direct and not afraid to be direct and not afraid to ask hard questions, or hard is a relative term, but questions that may like, oh, is that polite or that's improper or that's, nothing salacious, of course, but just saying like, well, what part do you own in this? Right. Because I'm asking myself that question often. So I feel like I should be able to ask anybody else that question. Right. And so if I had to, I don't know if it's secret or, it's anything terribly unique in the sense of, it's just my nature or my essence is like, hey, like, let's get in here. Right. Let's get in here and unpack things and like see what's going on and not afraid to explore that, and not when we as coaches are often only listening to one side of the story. Not always, right? But sometimes we get that opportunity. Matt, I know you're on an engagement recently where you get that opportunity to meet a manager, or meet somebody else in the story. But oftentimes it is a one-sided conversation. And so I feel, and I would want someone to do this for me, right? If I was doing a session with either of you or both of you, I would want someone to poke a little, because this is only one side, one perspective, one lens. And I do share that with people I work with to say, like, I will be asking you a lot of questions and I'm
Yeah.
going to be super annoying.
When
So
did you figure that that was like your essence? Your yeah.
that I was
Like
super
yeah.
annoying.
When did like
Like,
I know you've shared some of the stories, but I'd be really curious if you share more. Just like how did you cultivate that, or like, and how did you know like yes, this is what I'm really good at?
that's a good question too. I don't know if I'm good at it, right? That's probably, for somebody else to answer. So I don't know that I've ever said, oh, like, I'm good at that. I think I'm, everybody's a product of nature and nurture and the environment I grew up in. New York based, liberal, Jewish household. My mom was first generation, so therefore I'm second generation. So the matriarch of my family, my mom's mom, she was, I don't think she thought about it. She just sort of said what she needed to say because she came here. She escaped Europe before really the onset of the Holocaust, but it was, kind of bubbling up. And, what she made of herself and her life, she didn't feel any need to softly pedal, right, wrong, good or bad, right? She didn't see him. And so then you take it through the generations and you learn how to refine that and make it a little more nuanced as opposed to just a byproduct of survival. And so, and also on my dad's side, like, I have a lot of very strong women on both sides of my family. And again, I don't know that anybody was really thinking about it necessarily, but I don't, difficult conversations or direct conversations were more the norm. And again, right, you hope that as it feeds into different people in the family dynamic and different generations, you hope that it becomes a little more maybe nuanced, insightful, or not reactionary, I guess is more how to say it. And then in terms of like knowing like what's your superpower, I think I always, as I like to say, I hate people, but I love them. Right? I'm always like, I hate people, but I always loved, I was always a people person. I grew up with my dad. I would go on the subway and he would talk to all these people on the subway. And so it's like was normal to me. I didn't really know the difference. And, it was only later where I was like, oh, not everybody just talks to people. But my dad, he would. And I've kind of carried that and I've ended up meeting just some, extraordinarily interesting people in random situations who in some cases, I'm still connected to them, right? And people are like, how did you meet? And, I might tell the story, the other person might tell the story, and people are like, what? And I'm like, yeah, that's like, I was not so long ago, I was on a flight from New York to Indianapolis, and I sat next to this guy, and he was with his buddy, but they weren't sitting together, and it was right before the Indianapolis 500, and they were going to this car auction, and I had asked him all these questions and about the car auction, and to his credit, he like asked me questions and I guess listened very carefully to like what I said I did and where I worked. So then I got a follow-up email with all the answers to my questions, which is kind of amazing. But the reason I'm telling you the story is now my stepson's best friend is named Sam. He goes to Wash U and he's thinking about an internship and he's like a comp sci math whiz. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I too was actually listening in the conversation. We don't always all listen, right? But I was actually interested in listening in that conversation. And he was speaking about one of his sons who does like some crazy, like his son was a gamer and then like now does some like crazy techie. I don't even know what his son does. It doesn't matter. And so then I sent him an email the other day and I said, do you remember I said you told me about your son and this, and I said, oh, my stepson's best friend, who's everything I just said to you. And I said, can you ask your son if he'll take an intern? Right. And then I had to say to Sam, who Sam at this point knows me, he spent plenty of time in this house. And I said to Sam and I were texting and I said, oh yeah, I reached out to this guy on a plane who I met on a plane. And I said, yes, you and Ian can continue to make fun of me that I talk to strangers, but this might just get you your internship. Right. So like that's just, so I've always been curious about people. And then how did that ultimately segue into getting into coaching? I think the coaching piece, it's nothing is accidental, but it was sort of accidental because people would be like, oh, talk to Julie, just go talk to Julie. And I thought they were saying that because I was bossy. That's why I thought they were saying it. I really did for like the longest time. I really I didn't put two and two together. I really thought it was because like I'm bossy and I'll tell them what to do, which I am. But so I didn't quite connect that people also felt like safe in that conversation and they felt like, yeah, I might ask them hard things, but it was super safe and it was coming from like a tough love perspective. And so, yeah, I just always assumed it was because people thought I was policy.
It is gentle. How would you see, now I've experienced it personally, but how would you see sort of that tough love, direct, I'm going to say safety inside your coaching? How would you see that? How would someone see that?
That's a good question. I think oftentimes when I'm initially working with someone, or even now I'm sometimes in this position where I'm doing an intake, and then I'm ultimately leveraging other coaches because I run a coaching practice now, as you know, Matt and David. But so I'm not always the person who's going to be doing the coaching, and I try, words are meaningless until someone gets to know you, but I make it very clear, right, that I'm team Matt, I'm team David, and that the company may be paying for this, but you can show up and tell me you're leaving. And we're not going anywhere, right? This is our capsule, and that some of these conversations may be difficult or awkward or uncomfortable or tear provoking or whatever it might be. And that is only to get to another, a different place, different mindset, or to get insight into something. And then I think I'm not being trite when I say this, but it is ultimately your words have to match your actions. So I think people just come to, or most people anyway, at least the feedback I get, have come to understand that I am like, you know, it is team whoever, and that they do feel super safe. I just, before I got on with both of you, I just talked to someone who I coached him a long time ago before. I think it's been actually like I haven't coached him probably for 2+ years, and I probably haven't spoken to him almost a year because he took a sabbatical and he was traveling. And anyway, we just haven't been able to catch up, but we did finally catch up. And I recently connected him with some other folks. And when I got on that call, he said, "Oh yeah," he said, "Oh, I hired Stephanie, and I talked to Jacob, and he might be able to have a job here." Like those are all of my coachees, and they're all talking to each other. And like he hired one of them who she now has her own business in growth marketing consult. He's like, "Oh yeah, I hired her, and I love this one." Like, and they're all doing. I don't even know. They're like, but I say like, "Hey, will you talk to this person?" Right, and then they are off and running. And so I think people get a strong sense. I hope anyway that I'm operating in their best interest.
So I like a couple things I got like as I was listening to you. First was boss coach is not a bad brand, not a bad branding statement. And there's a
Yeah.
certain thing like you do like it's fearless listening. It's like there's no conversation that's going to throw me off. So like bring it on. And I love that.
That's a good way of describing it. Thank you for those words, because it's sometimes hard to describe yourself, and it also maybe doesn't come across as genuine, right? When people are like, "I'm funny," right? And all three of us have a good sense of humor, but you're like, "I'm funny over here. I'm funny,"
Maybe.
right?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
better
So
laugh at
it just
me.
sometimes doesn't land as genuine. So it's nice to have the two of you as a mirror. It's like, yeah, I am bossy, so boss coach is good. And yeah, you bring it on. You can say anything you want to me. Like I don't care.
That's a pretty good
Anything.
sauce. That
It's
that
not.
boss
I mean,
coach,
I
I think,
care.
is actually a pretty good sauce because it kind of balances the, yeah, stir it up.
Yeah.
Julie, what do you want from a coach?
Fearless listening for sure. Right. Sense of humor. Just because you have to be able to laugh, right, or like bring levity to the situation. Like I don't want someone just staring at me, like and a balance between the challenging approach slash questions, and being anything on the other side as appropriate, right? Compassionate, empathetic, etc. But a thought partner, somebody who's on one level is a mirror, another level is a lens, and he is your witness, or is listening to what you're saying, and then putting it through a decoder, not a filter, but a decoder,
Mm.
right? So sometimes something one of us says, any of us say, three of us, our coaches, whoever, doesn't matter, your kids, doesn't matter who it is. It's like what seems like an offhanded comment, when somebody else decodes it and shares it back to you, can really help provide a perspective or insight. So I think that's, kind of, so I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but thought partner, decoder, trusted, obviously, that sort of goes without saying. But you can't have any of that without the listening piece. And it's really, I think, hard for all of us sometimes to listen from a place of hearing versus responding. It's for all of us, everyone.
Yeah, the filter, like our filters are strong. Like everything, like what is it? We talk at like two to 300 words a minute, listen at 300 to 400, and we think at a
Mm-hmm.
thousand to 2,000 words a minute. So that filter is all about those,
Mm.
like all those words. Is It's a tough thing to shut off. The decoding word was really interesting. So like, what would you give me an example of something you've heard that you decoded and fed back to a client?
I was recently speaking to someone who, she's probably in her, I don't know exactly how old she is, but she's, kind of in the like whatever stage of your career when you're in maybe your mid to late 30s. I don't know what that is. Like advanced beginner. I don't know what that is, right? Intermediate. I don't know what that is. And she works in a more like operational administrative role. And there's a lot of stuff going on in the organization. And I happened in this case to be privy to the other stuff going on in the organization because we're doing group trainings also, and you don't always get that, but I happen to be privy to that. And she was going down this path of, and I really think part of it was she needed a place to vent, but she was going down this path of venting and finger pointing and all of those kinds of things. And it's not her, it's them, etc. And some of it I think is actually true and accurate, right? She's kind of caught in a bit of a storm. But after a couple sessions, I said to her, when it was like on the loop, was on repeat, and I had established a little bit of rapport with her, and I said, I think you really need to make a decision as to whether or not you should stay there. And I that was like on your face, Matt. Like that kind of was startling to her. And I said, you have the ability to elevate yourself and to work on X, Y, and Z aspects of yourself and how you respond and react in these kinds of situations. And then there is a component that you have no control over and is probably not going to change for the foreseeable future. And I think that really is accurate in this case. Like, again, I just happen to have the insight. And I said, so I didn't use the word decoding, but I said, I've listened to you, we've been in conversation now for a couple of sessions. And what I'm hearing is, right, this is that you like some of your coworkers, etc., but that this isn't really the right place for you, but you've actually not said that, right? It's not really the right place for you given the circumstances, right? It's not the right place. So as opposed to spending all this energy on complaining to a certain extent, but complaining, venting, and talking about what's happening, as opposed to at this point asking yourself the question, what's so I worked with a coach who, when I first started working with D, I would be like blah 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 blah, like same thing, right? Like blah blah blah, whatever. And she'd say, Julie, what's so? At the end of the day, what's so, right? What's so, right? And so I said this similar thing to this woman, and I said, what's so is you don't like it, you're stressed out, certain things aren't going to change. You have accountability and responsibility for how you respond in the situation. But what's so is that, this part of it isn't going to change. So you have to make a decision.
Yeah, I know. I think like the what so, the questions, the most difficult questions that people need to ask themselves, like come through in your decoding or your
But
intuition.
what's
It felt like.
so is a very simple, but like when I started working with D, she's like, okay, like all this noise, you're saying all these things, but what's actually so? What's actually so is we have X, Y, and Z things about ourselves, and then here's the situation. So, what action do you want to take? And that's not to try to minimize the human impact of it, but in asking yourself the question of what so, and having somebody maybe help decode or move the noise away for a minute. I think it's a little, I think you're faced with that question, what so? You don't have to like it, but you're faced with it. So I try to use it myself. I really do. Like I find myself in a situation, I'm like, okay, Julie, what so? And
Yeah.
you can use that in any situation, like someone who's interviewing for a job, someone who whatever is asking for a promotion. Like it's not just like these drama situations, right? It's just like, okay, what so? Like I've accomplished X, Y, and Z. My market rate is this, right? It's like it's just a practical question, but you have to kind of
Yeah.
decode or move aside some of that noise.
Yeah, there's probably other ways for people that they hear it, you know, get off the pot, whatever it happens to be. what so? What do you want to do now that you know what you know, or now that you've got it out, you're looking at it.
What so in
Now
this
what?
situation, what are the facts? Like what are the realities? What are, whatever the particular situation is. And I do remember like when D first did that to me, and I was so irritated. Like so it's just like because it brings it all down to like okay, this, and this. And so what choice or action or inaction for that matter do you want to take?
Yeah, that client accountability, right? It's like, what do you need to be accountable to yourself,
Mhm.
and also being accountable to the facts. Like you might not be saying it directly, but you need to see it and then be
Mm,
accountable to it to kind of move forward.
mm,
And I sometimes
yeah.
couple it with like this idea of catching and pivoting, right? So if someone's spiraling or they're, whatever it might be, they're like over, like there's a lot of like stuff going on, right? With a lot of like the crazy town choir going on, as I also like to call it. It's like catch that moment and pivot by asking yourself, what so? Like, what is really so? And maybe you just don't belong there anymore. Maybe you do, but you got to decide that. And part of that what so would be I want to stay here. However, the what so is this thing over this dynamic over here isn't going to change. So then, therefore, I have to be okay with that. That's the what so.
Julie, what would you recommend? What are three resources that you recommend that people read, pay attention to, listen to? Doesn't have to be a book. It can be, Dave likes to say, you could even recommend poetry.
I wish I was that knowledgeable about poetry, but sure, if that works for someone. But I can't specifically recommend it because I'm not that knowledgeable, I'm a little ignorant when it comes to poetry. Well, if people, Matt, I know you enjoy reading books. And so you and I have talked about, like, I love the app Blinkist, right? So I think for those who are knowledge seekers through books, Blinkist is an app that some of your listeners may know about, that it's like I'm aging myself or dating myself, but it's like the cliff notes of books, right? So if for people who don't know what cliff notes are, it's this, it's a summary chapter by chapter, but it's quite well done, and you can take notes, and it links to Evernote, and I'm sure it has other, secret powers that I don't know about, but and it's very affordable, and it's a great way to be able to say, oh yeah, you know what, maybe I actually would get the book, whatever, ebook library, buy it, and go deeper. But at least like now I got a taste of this in the high level. So I recommend, for someone who likes knowledge, to consume knowledge that way, Blinkist is a great way to get to start, and kind of you can also just go down the rabbit hole and like see what they have, and look at topics. I think other resources are, I mean, there's a million podcasts out there, and I am not an expert on, except for about yours, but I'm not, for someone who's entrepreneurial, how I built this. Like, there's just so many. And I think there are probably ways of searching by topic, depending on what you're interested in, ones that might be geared directly towards women. So if you're someone who likes to listen to things, like you walk on the treadmill or you whatever take the dog for a walk, like it really depends on how you like to consume information, but certainly there are great podcasts by subject, by all kinds of things.
You got a coaching book you like?
No, not really.
Okay. It's all
What's
right.
that one,
Mhm.
Michael? What's the one? I think
Michael
Matt,
Bungay Sr., This Coaching Habit.
people love that book.
Yeah, I do too. I
How do you
recommend
say
that
his
one.
name?
Michael, or at least I say it, Michael Bungay Stanier.
He's Australian, right? So
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah, lives in Canada. Yeah.
yeah, I actually recently met his publisher. I think I might have mentioned that to you, Matt. I met the publisher of that book. So I
Yeah.
know people really love that book, um, but I don't have like a particular. I'm not against that book, of course, but I don't have a particular like technique book, if that makes sense. I don't know. I think there's a lot of them. And Matt, you're a great resource, and Dave, I'm sure you are too, because you teach your class. Like, I would probably ask the two of you what your favorite books are, because I'm not one for that.
I think one book that you recommended years ago, Julie, that I really liked was An Everyone Culture.
Oh, I was gonna
by
say, like, for yeah, and that's actually a
Keegan and
coach book.
Leahy.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah, that's a
great
really good
book.
one.
That's a
Hmm.
fantastic book.
Yeah,
Fantastic book. I have that out
Yeah.
there.
yeah,
The Everyone Culture. They're from Harvard, but it's actually a great book, and it's sort of pre-anacronym, right? It's
yeah.
pre like the world we live in of around anacronyms, and it's just great. And they have great case studies in there. That's a really good. You know what book I love? It's a Tool Gawand. I'm looking for well, he wrote the checklist manifesto, which is like the most
Mm,
fantastic book about how like and it on some levels there's some scary stuff in there how hospitals never use check. He's a surgeon, a neurosurgeon out of Boston, but he
mm,
never that hospitals never used checklists until the 2010s. But he is a great storyteller, and
mm,
he takes you through like all these interesting examples or checklists and how checklists really came out of aviation. But the other book that I love of his, so that's more sort of like not a business book per se, but it's just a great book, The Checklist Manifesto, and why checklists are important no matter how, if you're an expert or not at whatever you do, because then you don't have to think about the little things, sort of like the mundane things. And he interviews the guy who landed on the Hudson. It's a great book. But the other book is Being Mortal that he wrote, which is and he talks a lot about his father, who was a doctor, and it's about not specifically about aging, but just about this idea of what is a life well lived. It's a fantastic book.
mm. Dave, what are your thoughts around what you heard today? This is our second chance to really talk with Julie about her secret sauce.
Oh, by the way,
Uh,
the other book I love is
I
Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning.
Mm,
Everybody's probably
excellent
you
choice.
two have probably read that.
I I need to reread it every few
Mhm.
years. Julie, you are the fearless listening boss coach,
You're my marketing chief.
and
No.
sign me up. Happy to, and I every time we talk, it is like it's unfiltered, it's authentic, and I can see how your clients just like want to share with you, and I love that you hold client accountability, like in on the top of your checklist, right? In terms of what do you hear, so what so it's so funny because I keep saying so what so I
But that's all right. That's part of it.
Yeah,
thank you,
yeah. I,
Matt.
you know what? I was just going to actually say it's the client accountability. For those of you who don't know, Julie was my coach for a few years. And I think the accountability is really what allowed me to make some significant shifts. And I think that that would be the case in her clients as well. But I think the question about what so really is what made me go, all right, there it is. It's sitting on the desk. What do you want to do with it? Or do you just want to talk about it because you're not actually ready to do anything?
Which is fair, by the way.
Which is fair, but it actually, talking about it actually gave me that sort of impetus to want to do something and sort of get off the pot. Don't just complain. You've whinged and whined long enough. Now it's time to take some action and to really kind of put your courage to the test. So that is actually a really one good reminder this afternoon, and that's important for coaches to be able to do that.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Matt Dodson.
All right. So, Julie, could you tell us how could we get in touch with you? How would people find you or the work that you do or anything like that? How would they get in touch with you? You're very well connected. Everybody knows Julie Smith. So,
I don't know that I'm well connected. I like to connect all of you, but
that's right.
they can call me, email me, find me on LinkedIn, whatever it is. They can. I'm happy to talk to whomever. They can call the two of you too.
I would say also one of the things that people may not know about Julie is I think it was maybe about a year ago, all of a sudden on LinkedIn, you got this idea that you could connect people that were losing jobs and that you could connect people to other people. And I just found that to be, oftentimes when you see people doing something just for the true altruism of just finding people work, that was very inspiring. to see that being done. So really good
I
work
appreciate. Yeah,
and
thanks.
good on ya. Yeah.
Well, we're all in it together in some way, right? We're all
Mm.
interconnected as humans, and so I appreciate that shout out. And
Mhm.
I do believe that we're all interconnected, and at different times we all hit different speed bumps.
Yeah.
So why
Yeah.
not try to help each other if we can, or to connect each other, like my threesome that's like off running, doing whatever they're doing. I have no idea. So
Mm.
but I love it. It gives me joy. Like that is, one of my greatest satisfactions and joy. Like I'm so happy that the three of them and other instances are, and Matt, you introduced me to Dave, right? And now, Dave's in my life. So it's all good. This interconnectivity is good.
I like that. Yeah, there's something about like just being aware that there's humans next to you to connect with. I really like that. I better quickly put this pitch in. Are you feeling stuck or overwhelmed? And I want to say, are you facing what's so? Character Matters Coaching and Consulting provides leadership coaching and consulting to empower you to overcome obstacles and reach your full potential. Visit charactermatters.us.com to learn more about their
Woo,
transformative
woo,
coaching
woo.
and how to get connected to Matt for your organization, who has been coached by Julie.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Dave. Thank you, Julie. Thank you for taking the time with us.
Thanks for
And
having me back. I'm looking forward to my
Fabulous.
Yeti cup.
yes. Thank you, everyone. And until next time,
Say hi to the Maxes.
thanks for listening. If you love this podcast, please share it with another coach or leader. Make sure you go to the show notes to get all the resources from today's episode.